The Indian impact on the Hamburg G20 communique was substantial, from a separate leader's statement on counter-terrorism to a section on the anti-microbial resistance campaign. Many focus areas that Prime Minister Narendra Modi raised at the Hamburg summit found their way into the final declaration. PM Modi also called on G20 nations to walk the talk to facilitate tech and financial infusion in Africa. Remember, Africa was a special focus area at the Hamburg summit under the presidency of Chancellor Angela Merkel.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi achieving what he set out to do at the Hamburg G20 meet. He kept the focus on the global menace of terrorism from the very first session and in his interaction with leaders from across the world. The outcome was a joint statement on counter-terrorism.
Through the statement, the G20 leaders have vowed to eliminate terrorist safe havens all around the world. Most certainly from India's point of view, this was almost as important a document from the G20 as the communiques.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi also had a big impact on the issue of black money and corruption.
Prime Minister Modi has added a lot of weight to G20 deliberations on anti-corruption and black money, illicit wealth, illicit financial flows. Besides that, there has been focus on Africa, development of African continent as the new frontier of development.
In another pat on the back for India, the G20 Hamburg Agreement calls for completion of IMF quota reforms and a new quota formula by 2019. Prime Minister Modi has been raising the issue of expanding lending quotas in global financial institutions at various multilateral fora. Making a brief address at the third working session of G20 summit in Hamburg on partnership with Africa, migration and health, PM Modi said that G20 nations must walk the talk to facilitate technology and financial infusion in Africa. He highlighted India's multi-layered development partnership with Africa and said that in addition to building capacity, it was vital to improve social, physical and IT infrastructure in Africa.
Africa has been focus of the German Chancellor also, Angela Merkel, because if situation deteriorates in Africa, if the development is not much in Africa, a lot of migrants come across the Mediterranean to Europe, and that impacts the security and of course the economy of European countries.
On health, Prime Minister Modi spoke about India's new health policy against emerging challenge of antimicrobial resistance, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan and yoga for preventive healthcare. Once again, AMR finds a mention in the Hamburg G20 communique. On migration, Prime Minister said that dealing with forced external migration called for debate and cooperative policy framework. He added that external migration must be distinguished from legal migration. This viewpoint too has also found a place in the Hamburg resolution. At the fourth working session of G20 summit in Hamburg on digitization, women's empowerment and employment, PM Modi said that borderless digital world represented opportunities but also risks. The Prime Minister highlighted about India's journey to low-cost world-class technology. He spoke about adoption of integrated approach under national cyber security policy. Prime Minister Modi expressed strong personal conviction for gender empowerment and said that there was no real growth without empowering women. The PM said that primary endeavor was to connect growth to jobs.
Prime Minister did share a slew of government programs laid out by Government of India in the domain of development, youth, skilling, development, Clean India campaign. So in a way it was also a forum of sharing the national policies which are aligned with the global commitments.
India helped shape the discourse over the issue of terrorism. It was Prime Minister Narendra Modi who raised the issue of terror on global platforms such as the BRICS and the G20. With camera person Surendra and engineer Hukum Singh, Siddhant Sibal, DD News, Hamburg, Germany.
After some tough negotiations that lasted over 2 days, the Hamburg Joint Declaration emerged. 19 of the 20 leaders were able to agree on all points made in the communique, with the exception of President Donald Trump, who could not agree on climate change. So, breaking with tradition, a separate paragraph on the US's stance on the Paris Climate Agreement and fossil fuels was added. On the trade front, non-discriminatory reciprocity and stress on open inclusive trade agreements emerged.
that it was climate change that was the most contentious one. US stuck to its point, but said that it's willing to give technological support and assist developing countries. That is a major breakthrough.
The Paris Climate Pact is irreversible. That was the voice that emerged from European nations at the G20 Hamburg summit. 19 members of the G20 have reiterated this position despite President Donald Trump's withdrawal from the Paris Agreement. As all efforts to convince US to come on board failed, the G20 statement was forced to carry Washington's disagreements on the issue, but with a rider. While the communiqué acknowledged Trump's withdrawal from the Paris Pact, it added a conciliatory note of America's commitment to helping other countries access and use fossil fuels more cleanly and efficiently. Addressing media after the summit closed, German Chancellor Merkel expressed disappointment that the two sides failed to reach a compromise formula.
What becomes clear in this declaration is the dissenting view of the United States, but I am very gratified to note that the other 19 member states of G20 say that the Paris Agreement is irreversible, that we feel committed to what we agreed on, and that it is to be implemented as quickly as possible, and that we also agreed on a so-called Hamburg Action Plan on climate and energy.
Washington's wish to work closely with other countries to help them access and use fossil fuels more cleanly and efficiently may come as breather for developing nations that seek assistance in the transition from conventional energy sources to cleaner ones. India has also categorically conveyed to the G20 that its progression to clean energy will take its due course, given its growth and development commitments.
We have held this position that the clean fossil fuels will remain a part of our energy basket for some years to come. So we certainly see ourselves also as benefiting if the US actually assists us. Our own progression would be from dirty coal to clean coal, gas, and of course Prime Minister has a huge commitment to the renewables. We are moving in a truly major way, probably faster than any other country on the globe, into solar.
On the issue of trade and investment, G20 has vowed to keep markets open, noting the importance of reciprocity and mutual engagement with focus on non-discrimination. It also speaks of fighting protectionism, including all unfair trade practices. The grouping also recognized that the benefits of international trade and investment have not been shared widely enough and pledged to enhance cooperation towards inclusive and sustainable global growth. The G20 recognized legitimate trade defense instruments and said it would promote favorable environment for trade and investment. The next G20 summit will take place in Argentina in 2018, followed by Japan in 2019 and in Saudi Arabia in 2020. With Sudhakar Das, Siddhant Sibbal's report, DD News, Hamburg.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Saturday pressed upon his British counterpart Theresa May to ensure UK's cooperation to bring back economic offenders amidst India working hard for the return of fugitive liquor baron Vijay Mallya and former IPL chief Lalit Modi.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi and British Prime Minister Theresa May met for the first time on the sidelines of the G20 summit after the UK polls. Both leaders talked about a whole range of issues. PM pressed upon his British counterpart Theresa May to ensure UK's cooperation to bring back economic offenders.
Cooperation on economic offenders?
That you have seen our tweet. What we have said is that Prime Minister asked for cooperation on that matter.
This comes amidst India working hard for the return of fugitive liquor baron Vijay Mallya and former IPL chief Lalit Modi. Mallya has been in the UK for months, escaping arrest warrants against him, while a court in London is also hearing a case regarding his return to India. PM Modi offered his condolences to the victims of the terror attack that struck Britain, and both leaders discussed how to combat the menace of terrorism.
Unfortunately, United Kingdom and several other European cities have suffered from several terrorist attacks in the recent past, so Prime Minister offered his condolences and sympathies and of course support to combat this global menace.
He also had a fruitful engagement with the British Prime Minister, especially on the issue of economic offenders staying in London. Clearly, India was welcomed by all and was a force of influence at this year's G20 summit. With my camera person Surendra and engineer Hukum Singh, Siddhant Sibal, DD News, Hamburg, Germany.
Ross Atkins, presenter with the BBC, has said that Donald Trump has shadowed everyone at the summit, but India's PM Modi remains an influencing voice. He was speaking to our correspondent Siddhant Sibal.
India's role at the G20 summit. India has been talking about various issues on various platforms, but India's role as a voice of influence at the G20 summit.
So while I'm absolutely certain Prime Minister Modi is bringing considerable influence, especially on climate finance, support for developing world countries as they bring in policies that will aid tackling climate change, the reality is the subject matter, the nature of the conversations has been dictated by one man above all others.
So focus on a lot of issues, but it's Donald Trump, major person who's influencing all the issues here at the G20 summit. Well, that's Ross Atkins of BBC with us from Hamburg. Well, that's all with my camera person Surendra and my colleague Sudhakar Das, Siddhant Sibal from Hamburg, Germany.
US President Donald Trump walked up to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi for an impromptu interaction before one of the sessions at the G20 summit. Arvind Pangaria, Sherpa for India at the summit, tweeted, "In an impromptu interaction at the G20 summit, President of the United States waves to the PM, walks to him. Other leaders gather around. Great moments." The Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Prime Minister of Vietnam Nguyen Xuan Phuc in Hamburg on the sidelines of the G20 summit. The PM even tweeted about this bilateral meeting and said, "Met PM of Vietnam, Mr. Nguyen Xuan Phuc. India cherishes the special friendship with Vietnam and will always work towards even better ties." Prime Minister Narendra Modi also met Mexican President Enrique Pena Nieto. The Prime Minister tweeted about this bilateral meeting as well, saying, "Wonderful meeting you, President, at EPN. Our discussions today will have a very positive impact on India-Mexico relations." PM Modi held bilateral talks with Argentinian President Mauricio Macri on the sidelines of the G20 summit. Tweeting about this meeting, he said, "President @Mauricio Macri of Argentina and I had comprehensive talks. The potential of even stronger India-Argentina cooperation is immense." Enhancing ties with an important partner in West Africa, the Prime Minister had a pull-aside meeting with Macky Sall, President of Senegal. On the sidelines of the G20 summit at Hamburg in Germany, the World Bank on Saturday launched a program to support women entrepreneurs in developing countries. Initial funding of $325 million for the project includes large donations from Germany, the United States, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates.
Empowering women, particularly entrepreneurs in developing countries, was a key focus at the G20 summit on Saturday. World Bank launched a multi-billion-dollar program V5 funded by rich economies. The Women Entrepreneurs Finance Initiative will provide both financial and non-financial World Bank resources, including loans, technical assistance and guidance and policy reform to eliminate barriers for women in developing countries. US President Donald Trump's daughter Ivanka Trump, who herself has been an entrepreneur, has been actively pursuing the cause and called for governments to invest more in women.
When countries increasingly invest in female entrepreneurship, they're going to be hiring more women and driving workforce participation in their countries and bringing more women into the workforce and training them.
You two, Ivanka and Jim, taking this initiative jointly, are heading in the right direction. Is this the end of the journey? No, I think it should be the beginning. 320 and counting. We need more, and we need to make it efficient, likely to deliver to as many people as possible around the world, and focusing on where it will actually help communities.
The United States, Germany, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Japan are the key donors of the program, while China, UK, Australia, Canada, Norway and the Netherlands have also made generous contributions.
If we want to change the world, we have to invest in women and girls, in women entrepreneurship, particularly in the developing world. This initiative is going to be able to make sure that we're leveraging every penny in the places where people will make the most difference.
We're investing in prosperity, and we're investing in peace. With the $50 million commitment, the United States will continue to lead the world stage in developing policies to empower women financially in our modern economy.
Funding for the initiative comes from both the public and private sectors, including international financial organizations, commercial financing foundations, private equity firms and individuals. Bureau Report, DD News.
A huge protest against mass killing and abductions by Pakistan Army during G20 summit in Hamburg in Germany on Saturday. Balochistan's largest political party, the Baloch Republican Party, which also has a huge number of followers across Europe, held massive protests demonstrations during the G20 summit in Hamburg, city of Germany. The protesters were carrying banners and placards reading slogans against Pakistan and China.
Baloch people are protesting due to so-called CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is bringing and which already brought a lot of human rights abuses and restriction in Baloch areas, and Pakistan along China looting and exploiting the resource of Baloch people.
Back home, the